father's cold gaze looked down upon me. His eyes filled with disdain as if he was looking at something filthy. Without a second thought for his seriously ill daughter, he abandoned my mother and walked away. Outside, the woman who made my mother shed tears of frustration was probably waiting for him. I will raise this child by myself. We don't need you. With a sneer, my father turned his back on us and walked out the door. After it coldly shut, my mother and I cried endlessly. However, a few days passed, and our dire situation took a dramatic turn. Despite ignoring his persistent calls, I finally had the courage to say to my father, "Father? I don't recall having a father, aren't you mistaking something?" The tables had turned. My mother and I feared nothing anymore. "I'm coming over now," the man who once was my father bellowed. My mother and I decided to set a trap for him as we waited. My name is Alice, a normal 11-year-old girl who could be found anywhere. The only difference is that I have a very weak body. I've been sickly since I can remember and could hardly ever attend school properly. Most of my waking hours are spent at home, reading books or drawing. I always feel sorry for the trouble I cause my mother. My mother's name is Sherry. Despite also having a weak constitution, she works from morning till night for my sake. Don't worry about anything, Alice. It's okay. I will work hard. The person making my mother's difficult life even harder was my father, Tom. In the stories I read, there are many unworthy adults and villains. Frankly, my father was worse than any character in those stories, both as a person and as a parent. My earliest memories are of my father making my mother cry. He never contributed financially to the household, instead spending his time wandering aimlessly. My mother paid for everything including the water, electricity, gas, and food bills. I can't forget how desperately my mother clung to him, no matter how harshly he treated her. Please, cooperate. Think about your family for once. You're annoying, let go of me. Do you want to get hit? My father had a mistress and made no effort to hide it. You'd think my mother would have divorced him, but she had no relatives to turn to. She didn't want her daughter to grow up without parents, like her. My father knew this and used it to torment her further. You don't want Alice to grow up with just one parent, do you? Then don't interfere with what I do. Is that something a father would say? You're the worst. Shut up. Hey, you know what? Don't even think about crying to my relatives or your work colleagues. If you try anything funny, we're getting a divorce. Then Alice will have only one parent. I felt more like a hostage than a daughter. As I grew older, I began to despise my own weakness. If only I were stronger, I could have stood up to my father alongside my mother. To make matters worse, my father was not only a terrible person but also into alcohol and gambling. This often left him short of money, and it seemed he caused trouble at work as well. As far as I know, my father changed jobs 5 times. Always complaining about his coworkers at home. Everyone's looking down on me. Just you wait, you bastards. After making a huge mistake at work due to a hangover, he would try to relieve his stress through gambling. When he lost, my mother was always the target of his frustration. He frequently stole money from her, even snatching her wallet to take out cash. Stop. How are we supposed to live this month without this little money? Shut up. If you need money, sell your clothes or whatever. Whenever my parents argued, I always curled up inside my blanket, blocking my ears and closing my eyes, shaking until the storm passed. Eventually, I would hear the violent slam of the front door followed by my mother's sobbing. By then, my pillow was usually wet with tears. I couldn't stand the situation I was in. My mother would come into my room with swollen red eyes. "I'm sorry for making such a noise, Alice," She always tried to wear a brave smile. What else could I do but smile back and assure her it was okay? One day, I discovered something alarming on my mother's head and couldn't help but exclaim loudly. Mom, your head. Your hair. Oh, this. I'm sorry, it looks so unsightly. A large patch of hair had fallen out from my mother's head, a clear case of alopecia areata. I was shocked as if it were happening to me. What shocked me even more was learning that this wasn't the first occurrence. My mother looked at me with eyes clouded with resignation and tiredness, managing only a small smile. It's okay. It'll grow back on its own, like before. It's not in a noticeable spot. But I'm sorry, Mom. If only I were stronger. What are you talking about? You've done nothing wrong. You mustn't blame yourself. Never. The only thing I could do for my mother was to draw pictures for her. With my limited mobility, I expanded the wings of my imagination. I would bring to life vibrant worlds on blank sheets of paper with my colored pencils and crayons, hoping to make my mother smile. That strong desire has always been at the heart of my creativity. One day, the doorbell rang unusually. My mother's voice hardened as she answered. It seemed like bad news. My mother repeatedly asked the person at the door to leave, saying my father was not home. Who could it be? After a brief exchange through the intercom, my mother reluctantly opened the door. 3 large men in suits entered, all with stern looks on their faces. The most intimidating one stated they had lent money to my father. There was paperwork, and today was the repayment deadline. Your dad isn't here. I don't know where he is, and we don't have any money to give you. My mother must have thought they would understand if she explained the situation. But they didn't. The men started rummaging through our house, opening drawers, searching through cupboards, moving furniture, and even lifting up the tatami mats. The moment one of them took out a velvet box from the shelf, my mother's demeanor changed drastically. No. Please, not that. My mother had grown up in an orphanage and received a ring set with a real gemstone from the wife of the director when she left. It was valuable enough to be sold for a significant amount. The men had found and taken this treasured item. That's very important to me. Please give it back. No matter how much my mother resisted, the men were unmoved. They continued to search for anything of value, turning the room upside down. My mother's cries and screams were like those of a child's. I had never seen her so distraught before. After the men left, my mother collapsed amid the mess, hanging her head for a long time. Suddenly, she began throwing anything she could find around her, crying and groaning as if something pent up had exploded within her. My mother's frenzied state was terrifying. When I hugged her from behind, she came back to herself and began to sob softly. I'm sorry. Alice, I'm so sorry. Mom, it's not your fault. It's okay. Everything will be okay. The next day, after we had finished cleaning up, my father returned home in an unusually good mood, shockingly with a woman by his side. She had a bold and flashy appearance. Sorry, Lily, for the mess. Sherry. Make some tea. Alice, you're in the way. Go somewhere else. Oh, is this the sick daughter? That won't do, will it? Dragging down Daddy, huh? My drawings had fallen to a corner of the room. Lily, the woman referred to, picked one up without permission. She wouldn't give it back, even as I reached for it. In the end, she just tossed it aside. What a terrible drawing. No talent here. This belongs in the trash. That was the first time someone had evaluated my art. Lily's mocking tone deeply hurt me, even as a child. Neither Lily nor my father openly acknowledged their relationship, but it was clear to see. They were undoubtedly lovers. Having a partner bring a lover home and then being forced to serve them tea. I can't even begin to imagine the humiliation my mother felt. Furthermore, seizing a moment of distraction, my father stealthily took my mother's wallet. No. Not that money. Idiot. If you didn't want it stolen, you should have kept it safe. That's for Alice's hospital bills. Please, not that. My mother desperately tried to retrieve the money, as my father mockingly dodged her around the room. All while Lily laughed uproariously at their expense. It was a sickening sight. Hey, Lily, let's go out for drinks. Can't breathe in this place.
Bye.
Make sure you save up some more money for us, okay? My father converted the money my mother earned for my hospital bills into drinking money for his affair. I couldn't imagine anyone else doing such a thing, but my father was different. He must have thought it didn't matter what happened to my mother or me. After roughly pushing my pleading mother aside, he left with his lover. It was just after I turned 11. My health worsened significantly. I started getting fevers frequently and often couldn't get up due to pain throughout my body. After visiting the hospital with my mother, I was diagnosed with a terrifying illness. Pediatric cancer. Me? My mother must have heard everything from the doctor first. Her eyes were wet with tears, her makeup smudged and messy. Why does it always have to be me who suffers like this? Things would only get worse from here, with tougher battles and increasing medical expenses. My mother would surely work herself to the bone for me. But then, my father would just squander that money. Frankly, our prospects seemed bleak. It was so bad, it was almost laughable. I didn't lose my composure. Instead, I felt a new resolve. Can I still draw? Even with pediatric cancer? The doctor assured me I could and even suggested I sell my artwork, not just display it. We live in an era where individuals can connect with the world and promote themselves. There are countless avenues for selling artwork. The doctor, who also liked art, offered to buy some if I decided to sell. I had many drawings at home. It had never occurred to me to put a price on them and sell them. My mother and I immediately began researching how to sell my art online. We found sites for auctions and others that allowed artists to gather fans and patrons. A few days later, after a long absence, my father came home again. He seemed to have come to pick up some clothes. Without a word, he began stuffing his bag with garments. When I revealed that I had developed pediatric cancer, my father, unbelievably, snorted with laughter. So, it's all over then, huh? You'll be kicking the bucket soon, eh? How can you say such a thing to your own daughter? It's the truth, isn't it? Lucky you, Sherry. You'll be rid of the burden. Enough already. My father stood up, looking down at me with a cold gaze, as if he was looking at something filthy, utterly displeased. Leaving me, afflicted with pediatric cancer, and abandoning my mother, my father left. Outside, surely, Lily was waiting, the woman who made my mother shed tears of frustration.
See ya.
Alice. A sick kid like you isn't my child. It would have been better if you hadn't existed from the start. I'll do what I want, so you guys do whatever you want too. I will raise this child by myself. The one who is not needed is you. My father sneered at my mother's soulful cry and turned his back. After the front door coldly closed, my mother and I embraced and cried. However, those tears were actually of joy, liberated from a worthless man. One day, while I was drawing in my room as usual, my mother's smartphone rang with a call from my father for the first time in a long while. He wanted to speak to me. I put down my pencil and answered the phone. His voice sounded unusually cheery and somewhat frivolous. Hey, Alice. It's been a while, hasn't it? How's the illness? Are you keeping well? What do you want? If it's nothing, I want to hang up. Oh, come on, don't be so cold. You know, I am your real father? Father? I don't have a father, do I? I could hear him clicking his tongue over the phone, clearly irritated by my response. What a selfish man. I was getting tired of this conversation. Why don't you just say it? You found out my paintings are selling for a high price, didn't you?
Yeah.
That's right. Alice, you've got talent for art. There was a TV interview, right? I saw it. The girl who continues to paint while battling illness, wasn't it? Wow, as a father, I was so proud. Indeed, my artwork has received worldwide acclaim. Encouraged by my doctor, the results came from selling my work online. The more I released, the higher they sold at auction. An unbelievable amount of money was being transferred into my bank account every month. I had my mother quit all her jobs to focus on caring for me. Our time together increased, my mother's health visibly improved, and it was all positive. I had anticipated that my father would contact us eventually, flattering us in hopes of leeching off our success. You're even streaming videos of you drawing, right? I heard you've got 2,000 subscribers? That alone should be enough to live on, right? Wow, you really are amazing. Thanks. Is that all you called for? Because I'm going to hang up now. Wait. That's not it. Look, Alice, I've got a bit of a situation. Lately, I've been feeling a bit unwell, can't really work much. I'm completely broke. Oh, that's too bad.
Goodbye.
Then. Wait. Please, I'm begging you. You understand, right? Just lend me a little money. You're making a fortune, aren't you? Then you could spare a little for me, couldn't you? What a despicable man. Doesn't he have any shame? After looking at me as if I was something filthy and abandoning me. As soon as the wind changes, he's ready to flip his stance and grovel. Truly worthless. It wasn't a joke. Neither my mother nor I had any intention of giving a single penny to such a low man. Why should I give you money? That makes no sense. What do you mean it doesn't make sense? I'm your father. You're my daughter. Isn't that reason enough? Did you hit your head somewhere? I believe you were the one who said a sick kid like you isn't my child. No, that was. What I meant was, it was just a figure of speech. I didn't mean it. Thinking I could be deceived by such a lie was a huge mistake. I thoroughly rejected my father, refusing everything he said. Then, the father who had been groveling showed his true, filthy nature. Hey. Cut it out. You're getting cocky just because I've been humble. Do you even realize you owe your life to me? Show some gratitude. Gratitude? To you? I have grievances, not gratitude. Don't you get it? All you've done is make Mom and me suffer and cry with your actions. Don't start playing the father role now. Oh, is that so? Fine, I got it. I'm coming over right now. My father's threat was exactly what I expected. This was it. After being victimized for so long, it was time to settle scores. I ended the call and informed my mother that my father was coming. She nodded. Just as planned. Let's contact them and get ready. Right. And prepare a new canvas. I've got something new I want to paint. Lately, my urge to create was stronger than ever. The results were exhilarating, and I couldn't stop painting. The anger towards my father fueled my passion for art. In that sense, I might even owe him thanks. Hours later, my father arrived, with his mistress Lily in tow. The contempt in their gaze as they looked at my mother and me was palpable. My father looked around the room and scoffed. Tripods, cameras, canvases, easels. What's with all these paints and brushes? Acting like a real artist, huh? A pediatric cancer patient burning life to paint, right? And where are the paintings? Doesn't look like there's a single one here. Did you hide them? They used to be all over the place. Hurry up and bring them out. The two of them didn't hold back their spiteful comments. I felt a burning rage. I hadn't forgotten Lily's dismissive, terrible comment about my art. Not that her taste was reliable anyway. I manage all of Alice's works. And no, I won't tell you where they are. Honestly, I couldn't care less about the paintings. Give us the money. You earn, we take. That's how everyone gets happy, right? Let's keep it going, shall we? That works for you, right? That's absurd. Why should we give Alice's hard-earned money to you? It doesn't make any sense. Even a child understands this. My mother's newfound assertiveness seemed to shock both my father and Lily. Quitting her job to focus on us had changed her. She looked healthier, more vibrant, and seemed to radiate strength. Moreover, Tom, all you've ever done is cause distress. As Alice said on the phone, we have grievances, not gratitude. Not a penny for you, so get that straight. Oh, scary, scary. Once you have money, suddenly you're all high and mighty. Don't underestimate me, you ugly woman. I can take down 2 women anytime. Want to see how painful I can make it? By force? Go ahead if you think you can. Thanks to someone. I've suffered enough to develop alopecia. And even lost a precious gemstone given by someone I respected. Come if you dare. I'll show you just how angry I am. This was a fierceness in my mother I'd never seen before, filled with determination. Sharp objects like painting knives were within reach, warning of pain for any reckless approach. Perhaps fearing the consequences, my father did not advance but only glared. Wow, you've really changed, haven't you? Completely different from before. Yes, I've changed. I've learned from my mistakes. I've always regretted making Alice suffer because of my weaknesses. I should have divorced you long ago. We would have been better off without you from the start. Oh, really? So what are you going to do about it? You're going to kick me out? My father stepped forward, met by my mother, who stepped up without backing down. Of course, we're going to kick you out. This is our home, and you have no place here. You're being evicted, obviously. You have no place here. And just so you know, I'm suing you. I'll be filing a complaint with the court, so prepare yourself. Huh? What are you talking about, making such a fuss? Suing me for what? I'll bring everything to light. How I was oppressed by my husband on a daily basis, and the constant suffering. I even have medical records for my alopecia due to stress. There's no escaping this, so just get ready. We have plenty of funds for a lawsuit. Through managing the finances and artwork, I've gotten to know some excellent lawyers. Moreover, I'm somewhat of a public figure now. There's no way anyone would let harm come to my mother without consequences. Essentially, Tom has been a loser for a long time. He can't compete with us now. Realizing this, he started to laugh nervously. Don't be so mad. I get it, okay? I don't want to escalate things. I'll stop trying to force my way. I don't want to get arrested or stabbed by one of Alice's fans, after all. So, what will you do? The only option left is to leave without doing anything else, right? Don't be so cold. Think about it, haven't I done fatherly things occasionally? Bringing gifts, praising your cooking, even contributing money to the household at times. Isn't that worth something? How ridiculous. How shameless. Because of him, my mother and I suffered immensely, crying day after day. Memories of distress are all we have. I don't recall any fatherly deeds from him. But it seems Tom and Lily won't leave just because we ask them to. My mother and I exchanged looks and decided to let Tom and Lily self-destruct in their squabble. Okay, fine. You can have one of my paintings. Really? That's my girl, Alice. You're such a sweetheart. Thank you, Alice. So, where is it? I don't see any paintings here. Did you hide them? They used to be all over the place. Come on, show them to us. As Tom and Lily greedily scanned the room, I felt a surge of revulsion. They're not here, and I haven't decided which one of you will get one, if any. What? Choose between us? Obviously, it should be me, your father. Huh? Didn't you just get told not to act like a father? I have a right to it too. After all, I've never done anything to make Alice dislike me. Tom attempted to edge closer to me, blocked by Lily. Just as expected. Both were only thinking of their own benefit. The unsightly dispute between the lovers began. Listen, both of you. Tom is the worst. He's been seeing other women besides me. And to think he's not even that good-looking, so arrogant, right? A good-for-nothing without a shred of responsibility. You're one to talk. You've been seeing other guys too. And you're married, aren't you? Just roaming around while your husband is stationed overseas. I don't care. He's probably doing the same thing, so it's fair. Their ugly quarrel continued. Witnessing this, I grew increasingly disgusted. To think I share blood with such people. It made me wish for a complete blood transfusion. My mother was utterly dismayed, her gaze towards Tom and Lily utterly cold. I wondered why she ever married such a man. That's the look she had. That's when my mother's phone rang, likely from someone else who had had enough. Hello? Yes. Yes, of course. Please hold, I'll put you on speaker, Dad. What? Dan. Tom. I've been listening, and you've been nothing but trouble. Dan? What? What's going on? Through the speaker, the angry voice of my grandfather resonated. Chastising Tom for his actions and intentions, marking a turning point for our family. Away from the turmoil Tom had caused. Sherry's father had been avoiding his parental home for a long time. Because he was scared of his own father. He had also forbidden us from contacting them. However, the situation has changed now. As my grandmother and relatives on my mother's side have become allies to my mother and me. I've heard that you've been tormenting Sherry and Alice all this time. You've always been a good-for-nothing, and it seems you haven't changed a bit. Shame on you. Wait a minute. Why would Dan? What do you know? I know everything. We've all been watching everything unfold. Everyone.
Oh no.
You don't mean, through that camera? Indeed, that was the case. Since my father and Lily arrived, I had been live streaming their actions. Using the same approach I usually do for my video streams, but this time, only sharing the URL with my grandparents' house. Our relatives had gathered at my grandparents' house. likely watching my father's disgraceful actions on their TV screen. Having to witness the extent of your stupidity has embarrassed me beyond belief. I already know everything, including where you live and where your mistress resides. All thanks to Sherry. Tom, you better be prepared. Huh? You're planning to come here? Stop. Don't you dare come. Silence. I'll grab you by the scruff of your neck and make you apologize to Sherry and Alice. My grandfather's anger was genuine, and even through the phone, it felt intense. My mother, standing firm, added to my father and Lily's despair. Running away is useless. We know your patterns, your car's license plate, and even the hotels you frequent. We've hired a detective agency to uncover everything. It's only a matter of time before you're caught. This is the worst. What is happening? This is the lowest. We have nowhere to run. It's all your fault, you worthless man. What did you say? It's because you're always wasting money that I had to find a way to get more. It was your idea to sell Alice's paintings. Have you forgotten? As they continued to argue amidst the crisis, I couldn't help but feel completely disillusioned. Whatever happens to these two despicable adults, I couldn't care less. A week later, my father and Lily were arrested by the police for shoplifting at a convenience store. Seemingly out of desperation due to a lack of money. If they had access to their credit cards, they might have managed to stay on the run for another month, but they were blocked. Thanks to my mother contacting Lily's husband abroad. At the police station, my grandfather made good on his promise and confronted my foolish father. After paying a fine and being released, my father was brought before us by my grandfather. I am truly sorry for the trouble I've caused. Despite his apology and bowing in submission, neither my mother nor I were willing to forgive him. Yet, it felt like a closure of sorts. On the spot, my father was made to sign the divorce papers and was taken back to his parental home by my grandfather. Watching his dejected figure, I couldn't help but feel that he got what he deserved. My mother demanded a settlement of $15,000 from my former father for the years of oppression. Considering everything, it seemed a modest amount. My former father was also sued by Lily's husband for $20,000. A justified sum given that he had taken advantage of the husband's absence to misuse his home. Burdened with debts to pay these settlements, my former father now lives a constrained life. Unable to receive help from his parents. He resides in a small apartment owned by an acquaintance, working diligently to repay his debts. His reputation tarnished, he faces a long road of redemption. Recently, my mother received a desperate call from him, pleading for help. I can't take this life anymore. I'll do anything, just help me out. You'll do anything? Then never contact me again. That's all I want. Sherry. Wait, Sherry. As for Lily, her fate wasn't much brighter than Tom's. Abandoned by her husband, who was on a business trip, she was left with nothing. Unable to reach Tom for help, she ended up lost and alone. Returning to her family would have been an option, had they not disowned her long ago. As a result, it didn't take a month for her to end up as a homeless woman. Now seemingly a source of solace for others in her situation. Pediatric cancer is generally more treatable compared to cancer in adults. Largely due to the effectiveness of radiation therapy and chemotherapy. Approximately 70 to 80% of cases result in recovery. I was no exception. With the money earned from my paintings, I received the best treatment available and successfully overcame cancer. Moving forward, I plan to intensify my creative efforts as a way to give back to my mother, who has endured so much because of me. To start, I've built a house with a garden, a large custom home filled with our dreams. It includes my studio, a room for my mother to relax, a home theater, and an island kitchen. It's perfect. Had I not contracted pediatric cancer and met that doctor, I wouldn't have considered selling my art. Life is unpredictable, and it's hard to know what will ultimately lead to one's fortune. This thought has deeply resonated with me. Despite everything, we managed to get through it.
Yeah.
Our perseverance was worth it. We deserve a pat ourselves on the back. Indeed, the hardships my mother and I faced were extreme. Given that, it's only fair that a lot of happiness is due to us from now on. We plan to continue supporting each other, ensuring our days are filled with smiles and joy.